Welcome to Space, the show where we discuss the week's most pressing issues with Mint's editor Sukumar Ranganathan. Welcome to the show, Sukumar. Sukumar, first off, pretty much every day of this week, we've had some Congress MP or the other linked to some company that has successfully got coaling mining rights. Now, what do you think is going to be the larger political fallout of this? And given the ruckus that this has led to, do you think the government will be forced to cancel all of the allocations?
See, I think this is a mess that can only get bigger, right? You said every Congress, every day of the week there's been news that a Congress MP or a congressman has been linked. But I think there have also been people from the DMK who have been linked. There's been one person from the BJP who's been linked. And I think what we will probably find is that politicians across the board and across political parties, with the possible exception of the communists, because they claim they don't believe in big business, are likely to have business interests, either direct or indirect, in companies that got coal licenses. So I think there's a larger policy issue, and I also think it's a reflection of how smart the political class has been to recognize the fact that there is the possibility of making windfall gains in natural resources, and that they are ideally placed, given their political backgrounds, as people who can directly influence the allotment of these and thereby get some kind of kickback or something else from the companies concerned, or maybe even start companies and get the resources themselves, which we've seen happening in the case of the telecom scam, right? If you read the Supreme Court's judgment against against the companies, and there are 7 reasons why it says why Raja is guilty of various things, and it clearly lists how some companies were favored and how he had interest in some of the companies. So it's I think you may find the same sort of thing in coal, but I just think that at the tables being reserved, let's assume for some reason the BJP had come to power in 2004 or 2009, the story wouldn't have been any different. There would have still been a coal scam, there would still be a lot of ministers or parliamentarians involved, so nothing would have changed. So I just think it's a product of the times. The good news is it's come out. 20 years ago something like this might not have come out, but now it's out in the open. People are worried about it, people are discussing it. So I think there is a cleanup which is going to happen.
And moving on, the Supreme Court earlier this week has given a significant ruling saying that domestic courts cannot be involved in foreign arbitration proceedings. What do you think is going to be the big economic fallout or impact of this?
I think this is probably one of the most significant judgments that has been given out by the Supreme Court in recent years. We've increasingly seen a trend where a foreign company is involved with an Indian company. It could be a joint venture, it could be a partnership, it could concern a foreign investor. And whenever these agreements are entered into, there is an arbitration clause, and the arbitration usually happens outside India, except that when there is a dispute, there's an increasing tendency among the Indian parties involved to run to an Indian court and get immediate relief, stay some proceedings in some way, and all that. And some Indian courts, including the Supreme Court in 2 instances previously, have actually been amenable to doing so. But by giving the order that it did this week, the Supreme Court clearly says that domestic courts cannot get involved and pass any rulings on those arbitration proceedings that are happening. I think this is something that will reassure foreign investors, foreign companies seeking to do business in India, anyone outside the country who is trying to get into a partnership with anyone in the country. I think it would reassure them tremendously. So in that way, I think it's a big plus for India as an investment destination, for India as a place for doing business in. And I think if I were a foreign investor, I'd be very, very reassured by this judgment.
And finally, we've had reports this week which shows that how even high-profile MPs like Sonia Gandhi, they've absolutely neglected their own constituencies in providing basic amenities like electricity and water. And this especially when she's been championing programs such as Narega. Do you think politicians in general now are completely missing the aspirations of New India?
The broad answer to that would be yes, but I think the actual answer is a little bit more nuanced, which is the fact that some of these people belong to political parties which might not be ruling the state where the constituency is based, right? And things like water and power are obviously the purview of the party which rules the state, which might or might not be willing to representations from a member of parliament who doesn't belong to their party, saying, listen, can you improve healthcare here? Can you improve the electricity situation here? Can you improve the educational infrastructure here? But that said, I still think the data that we published this week was very, very depressing, because one would expect that national political heavyweights do have the ability to do the right thing by the constitution, right? Because even in member of parliament elections that happen outside the large cities, I would like to think that people vote on local issues, right? So a person in a constituency which is not an urban constituency, his concerns are not going to be about the kind of speeches that this person will deliver in parliament or how this person will help the whole business of policy making in Delhi. He will be worried about food, clothing, shelter, educational infrastructure, jobs, and all these are very local issues. And from that perspective, I think almost all our political leaders have failed.
So clearly, there's a lot of learning that a political class has to do, as well as a lot of catching up. Thanks a lot for joining us, Sukumar. That's all we have in this edition of EdSpace. Keep watching Mint for more.